Hello friends and welcome back to the channel. We're doing something again different. Well, slightly. Okay, I've got a link in this. We built some braille models quite a while ago and never got around to finish them. Let's get on to the finishing and painting. Two kits this time. First one is the Fly Hawk M1A2 Abrams. Quite an expensive kit actually, but the detail on it is really fantastic. You can see that the 1/72 scale kits have really pushed up in terms of detail. And the second one is a T-80U Russian-Soviet battle tank, this time from the company Model Collect, which has got actually pretty comparable detail. Anyways, let's go on to the painting stage. Okay, we're going to start off our usual painting system. We're going to use our Mr. Surfacer Black Brown mix. And this time I'm going to try something different. Well, initially, let's say we're doing the T80. We're going to be using our Mr. Colors, what we're pretty familiar with. But also I've bought these new AK colors, real colors. I sort of know what they are anyways. I had a test drive of them previously. So let's just have a look at the colors. Okay, so for the T80, we're going to use this, Russian green. And we're going to, for the highlight color or the sort of desaturated tone, we're going to add a little bit of tan at that mix. And for the Abrams, we've got a specific color, this Kark tan color, specifically for these US desert vehicles. Let's see how that works out for us. And for the highlights, we're going to use this tan color as well. And we're trying something as well. This is a new product from Ammo of Mig. It's a shader, which is an ink product, and we're going to see how that works out for us as well during the paint stage. So let's go straight into the priming stage, or black primer, or black undercoat, whatever you want to call it. We're using the Mr. Surfacer, as I explained previously, in a ratio of the brown about 70% and the black about 30%. Make that mixture up and it's added to the airbrush. The leveling thinner is what I always use with this Mr. Surfacer, compatible products, and they work really in conjunction with one another. Also, we are able to lay down the primer in a self-leveling manner, so we haven't got any problems with any dribbles or runs or anything like that. Now, with these small braille scale models, you can see that they're basically fully assembled. In terms of components, we've only got to separate the upper turret from the hull. And also, because they're quite detailed, there is a bit of photo etch brass accessories. You can see on the Abrams, we've got those details for those grills, and also on the T80, some other brass components and even a brass barrel. So we really need to use that primer to get down a undercoat for the subsequent paint steps, but also we need to get into all those dark recessed areas, as I've explained in previous videos. Now, why are we doing this T80 and this Abrams at the same time? I thought this would be a really good opportunity to show you guys the difference in weathering between two very contrasting paint schemes. So obviously with the Abrams, we're going for that desert tan color, and for the Russian green, we've got a darker color. So this is going to be a bit of an experiment as well, and it'll sort of serve the purpose of showing you how definition works in terms of weathering against your base colors. Okay, so let's start off with the T80. We're familiar with this paint. We use it all the time. It's Mr. Color paint. And we're starting off with this Russian green. We lay very thin coats, once again, using the airbrush, and gradually build up the color. It's very straightforward and quite a forgiving paint. Maybe I've explained that previously. I like to use this paint. It has a nice fine pigment. It allows for transitions and gradients. With acrylic paints, we have got that larger pigment. It doesn't allow us to fade that easily, but we're going to do other videos on that and explain a little bit about that later on. Okay, so once we've got the overall green laid down, we've also sort of tried to avoid the track areas, but it's inevitable that there's going to be green overspray where we can't be so accurate with the airbrush. But let's add some of that tan color into the green to make a lighter mixture. And now we're not doing anything really complex. We're not going to call it Zenithal method or color modulation or any other of that BS. All we're simply going to do is have a look at the model. There's a series of panel type shapes on the model, and all we're going to do is dot a bit of color into the inside portion of each of those panels. In that way, we've sort of got a highlighted tone or a variation in the color. That term modulation just means variation. It's exactly the same thing. Don't get too hung up on these terms, guys. What we're doing is basically breaking up and giving some depth. So the darker color was laid in first. That was a shadow base coat. And now this lighter color comes on top of it to provide some contrast. Okay, so now on with the Abrams. We're using the AK Real color for the first time. Well, not really the first time. I tried this paint out previously when I was invited to SMC in Eindhoven, and the AK guys let me try this at a demonstration, so I sort of know the paint anyways. Basically, this is the same as a Tamiya, as a Mr. Color. It's a lacquer-based paint. Don't get confused. It is not acrylic. Anything that can catch fire is definitely not water-based. Anyways, regardless of that, the philosophy behind that Real color is that there are researched paint colors that are meant to be technically correct. Not really too interested in that aspect. Basically, what I wanted was this Kark tan color to be, is it suitable straight from the bottle? And I'm laying down the base coat. It's a really nice color. It does look right. It looks great. It's I would say a little bit lighter color than say Tamiya Dunkelgelb, or that sorry, they've got a color called Sand or something, or brownie sand color. It's just a little bit lighter than that. It lays down perfectly well, exactly as we expected. And once we've covered that all up, now we're going to go straight away to use this contrast color and apply the same method. This is Iraqi Army Desert Sand. So it's just a lighter tone, and instead of mixing it or adding it into the base mixture, I've just gone into this neat, and again we're highlighting again into those panels. Nothing too complex. It's pretty easy to do. Lower down your pressure down to about 15 psi, and you'll have adequate control of the airbrush. And even though they're quite small models, this technique isn't really difficult. You'll be able to do it with a budget airbrush or similar. There's nothing complex to it. Once that's all laid down, we basically established both the base colors on these tanks. Now let's try and experiment with this new product. Okay, so we have this product called Shader from Ammo of Mig. Starship Filth is a name. Don't get too concerned about the names. They've always got some marketing gimmick behind them. Anyways, it's that sort of browny, greeny, I don't know what you call it. It's got that nice tone that's got that shade color. Now, previously, I remember doing this on aircraft with Tamiya Smoke, but the beauty of this shader is basically you don't need to dilute it. So we add the paint straight into the airbrush, straight in the airbrush cup, and we need to drop our pressure right down. Let's do a little test spray first and see if we're happy with how it comes out. And as you can see, if you're too concentrated with it, you're going to have a unsubtle effect. It just isn't going to look right. So by dropping down the pressure, taking a bit of control, all we're going to do is outline the outside portions of the panels, sort of drawing square shapes, etc., and just apply it subtly. Basically, when you apply it the first time, you should not be able to see it. After maybe one or two applications, you just see a slight tint of color coming in. And I'm really pleased with the effect. It's a really nice product. It's easy to use. It's convenient because it's straight from the bottle once again. So quite a nice variation. It quickens up the process. We didn't have to use a darker smoke shade to redefine the panel lines. And at the end there, we've got some nice contrasting elements on these small models. And I decided to try this as well on the T-80. Same technique applied. Obviously, with it being a darker green base color, it's more difficult to see, but it works just as well. You could vary the concentration. The one thing that I should really try and do is see how it works with a brush. But in this application, we're simply using an airbrush. Okay, so we've let the paint dry in both models for about a period of about 8 hours. Leave it overnight, it's the best thing to do. The paint will be set and ready to go. And once again, we're using our favoured varnish. This is Mr. Super Clear from Mr. Hobby, straight from the can using semi-gloss varnish. It's applied on both models throughout. The reason we're doing this is to protect our base work, and also it's going to allow the next stage to be easier. We need to use a couple of mediums that are best to flow over a surface that hasn't got a rough texture. So actually the real colour, it does lay down pretty smooth, and so does Mr. Colour Paints. But by just adding this varnish, we quicken things up. We've got that nice layer of protection. And let's go and have a look at the models now and just see where we are. Okay, let's just do a quick overview on the models. The varnish is dried up at this stage. Darkens up the paint somewhat, and they've got that sort of nice semi-gloss appearance to them. They look pretty good at this stage, and you can see the variations, nice and subtle. The shader certainly has enhanced some of the depth on those panel lines and broken up the geometry of the models. We wanted to enhance some depth to them. They're quite small, and there is a theory that models that are small need high levels of contrast. However, we're going to paint them exactly the same way as our 35th scale counterparts. Okay, now let's go on with the brush painting exercise now. I've seen it somewhere that either you brush paint or you airbrush models. Well, really you need to do both, in my opinion. So what we need to do is, because the tracks are already part of the model, we need to paint them in situ. Let's make up a mixture now using German Camo Black Brown from Model Color. That needs to be diluted with water, of course. And to ease the process, because we're painting the tracks, let's add some of the Liquitex Flow Aid. The Flow Aid is a fluid medium that allows the paint to more easily penetrate the details. Obviously the tracks are made up of these rather intricate moldings and some deep crevices, so by having the flow aid in the paint mixture, it's a lot easier to lay this paint on. It flows nearly like a wash, and maybe that's worth experimenting with at some stage. Anyways, it takes a bit of a while to do this, but don't worry about your accuracy too much, especially regarding the road wheels. We're going to do it in this sequence first. We'll paint up the tracks in the Camo Black Brown. Once that's done, avoiding any areas of the upper hull, that's the only area to be concerned with. The next stage now is to make up a paint of, this time, some rubber black mixed again with water, and we'll do the road wheels now. And the road, even if this black paint touches the tracks, not really a big concern. And also the road wheel portion that is camouflaged, also again not a concern, because we can come back and tidy up that outer rim at a later portion. Let's also paint up all the other details, and once we've done all that, all the brush painting work is done. Okay, so let's add another contrasting technique using acrylics this time. What we're going to use is some model color paint. For the Abrams, we're going to use this Iraqi sand color, and we're going to apply it in acrylics term. It's called a glaze. We call it a wash, call it whatever you want. Basically want it to be translucent. We want a filter type effect. We don't want it opaque to block in color. We just want to create a light layer on top of the underlying paintwork. So in order to do that, we dilute this paint about the ratio of 2 parts of water to 1 of the paint, and then apply it rather sort of carefully, I don't know, inside these panels, trying to be as careful as possible. And we're going to draw out some random details. Basically, it's going to create a little bit more visual interest, create these artificial highlights on top of some areas of the tank. For the T-80, we're doing the same technique. This time we're using this light green color from Panzer Aces. It's a camo color. It doesn't matter what it's called. Basically, you just want a lighter mix. You can mix up, of course, something from what you have inside your paint collection. Same principles applied. This time, however, we're going to sort of paint in a few of that those explosive reactive armour blocks in and some other areas, just to give it a little bit more visual interest. That's the only purpose, and I would say again, this is sort of optional, but it's something that's easy to do and it creates a bit of interest when you look at the vehicle. Okay, let's do the stickers next. The Fly Hawk one is a little bit more interesting. They have researched their markings, so we're going to do this one called Armageddon. It's the 3rd Battalion, 67th Armour Regiment, 4th Infantry Division, and this is in Iraq 2003, so a researched vehicle. With the T-80, there's no information from Model Collect, another generic Soviet vehicle, so I just chose these random markings to stick on the left and right hand side of the turret. Pretty easy. Let's just not talk about stickers. They go on pretty easy, and there's plenty of videos on that. Once that's done, there's no need to seal them, and we're on to the next stage. Okay, we're on with the weathering now, or the start of the weathering. And let's use, again, a different technique, and a really simple technique. And this time, let's use an out-of-the-bottle product. We're looking at the Ammo of Mig US Modern Vehicles set. And within that set, there is this wash, US Modern Vehicles wash. You don't need to worry again about the pretext of US Modern. Basically, it's a very dark brown wash. Now, an out-of-the-bottle product doesn't necessarily mean entirely out of the bottle. And this is a really case in point here. What we're going to do is take out some of this mixture, add it inside a tray, and really we need to dilute that down. As it is, it's just a little bit too thick. You can apply it on neat, however, you're pretty much going to create an effect that could be a little bit too powerful. Let's just build up the effect subtly, and also by doing so we can create something very, very easily, as I explain now. Okay, so we've diluted the wash about 50% with some enamel thinner. And instead of doing any of this pin wash stuff or, you know, trying to individually filter panels, we're just going to apply it all over the entire vehicle. And this is going to just do everything in one go. There's going to be really nothing other than this. The main sort of areas are really just the cleanup afterwards. So we're using quite a large brush. We're applying throughout. At the same time, we're using our brush to already drawing the streaks in the direction of gravity. So we're drawing down vertically time and time again. If there's any excess wash, just simply dry out your brush, reapply it, and just spread the wash. It spreads nearly in the same way as an oil paint, so it's pretty easy to mop up in that respect. Once we've done that, we've got an overall filter effect. There's no need to pin wash in this scale. There's no need to add in any black lines or anything artificial. And you've got this overall homogeneous effect, which I've talked about once again. Straight away, the vehicle is looking much more military, a little bit more used. Of course, use a rag as well to mop up extra wash. Continually come back. Once it's drying, go back with your brush, re-examine the model. Have a look if there's areas where the wash is puddled up, if there's areas where the wash is missing, and just continually reassess it. With these little models, it's really quite easy, but draw down and you can already start to build up the very first base level effect. You've done everything in one go once again. Really simple out the bottle product, applied all over, and straight away, we've nearly got a weathered model just from basically 15 or 20 minutes work. Okay, now we talked about the contrasting nature of vehicles. So we're going to apply the same wash again on this T-80. So again, it's this dark brown wash, and it's applied in exactly the same manner all over the vehicle. And once it's done, there's a touch of a tint of brown on the model. However, there's just really just not enough contrast for me. And that's what I want to talk about. With the light colored sand, it's quite easy to create these weathering effects. You're going to go on a contrasting color. With something that's a deep green, we need to contrast that in a different way. So although you could sort of leave it in this brown sort of tint all over, it just really doesn't do it for me. So let's create a contrast again. So for dark green, the contrast is naturally a light coloured dust. So again, we're going to use out of the bottle products. Let's use this rain marks or dust. There's quite a few products, it doesn't matter who it is, but it's an enamel wash which is of a light dusty colour. And again, we dilute it down, and let's just apply it all over the model once again and use the same technique. Now immediately you're going to see the contrast and details drawn out. By using these contrasting colours of weathering, we can bring out more depth and variety to the model. Okay, so let's just have a little look at our work at this stage and do a conclusion. Hope you enjoyed this one. Really simple techniques. What do you think the result is like? Do you think it's good? Do you think it could do with a bit more? Well, that's going to be the next video. This is really a case in point. At this exact moment, you may well wish to finish, and these models would be actually pretty acceptable as they are. So we can conclude it right here. I mean, sometimes we don't really need to push any weathering any further than a simple wash. And I hope I've illustrated that point. But anyways, in the next part, next week, I'm going to push some effects that will make the models even more interesting. Hope you enjoy. Leave any comments, any questions, and see you next week. Thanks a lot, guys.